Hey everyone, so here is the week 8/week 9 and 10 kind of overview that I'm going to do for the environmental education project. So first thing I want you to know is this is a big project that over a couple of weeks will add up to 100 points for the course. So this is something that you want to be able to spend some time on. So the overall view of the project is that you're going to be planning an outdoor environmental education lesson that you would do if we were in class. We would actually be going out to schools and teaching this, but since we're not, and virtually, you're just going to plan for that experience. And so using the information from last week, from week 8, or actually this week from week 8, about notebooks and trade books, you're going to choose one of the two. Either you're going to have your students using a science notebook to write in during your lesson, or you're going to have a trade book that you're going to use to help teach the material for the lesson, but you have to incorporate literacy in this lesson. So you also are going to be choosing an activity from some resources that are provided to you free online this term. If you were in class, again, we would actually be purchasing the Project Learning Tree books, and you would be using those to reference. So under the week 8 assignments, I've actually included some information for you. So I have done I've provided an example of the activity, the kind of writing out the lesson objectives and questions that I use to help me plan the lesson. And then I've actually taken a student's work actually from a previous term where they wrote up the lesson plan for this activity, and then also the data sheet that was used to collect data during the lesson. So those resources are all listed under week 8, and I'm going to go ahead and open up these, and so you can kind of get an idea of what they look like. So the Project Learning Tree Birds and Worms activity is one that is really popular for students to teach usually when we go out in the schools and do this. So this activity is about camouflage, and so this is what you would find online when you go to the Project Learning Tree resources. So it talks about doing the activity, it talks about things to think about, but you can also download this activity, and it gives you all the information that you need to plan or some of the information you need to plan your lesson. So including some like a word search that would be fun to do or incorporate as part of your activity. So while in the Project Learning Tree resources, it has much more connection to the standards, you're going to be kind of required, since we don't have access to the PLT books, to do a little more work on your own to fill in some of the materials. So because those are actually, the Project Learning Tree books are made for teachers, and these activities that are online are geared towards families. So they don't have like learning targets, or they don't have the standard listed, so you're going to have to come up with those on your own. So that's kind of an overview of what the activity looks like. This is what, so taking that activity, then you would need to kind of think about what is it that you're learning, what are the students, what's the purpose of the activity, and what would you like them to learn out of it. So two things are going to guide you in creating that. So the first one is we're all going to be using the same NGSS standard, which is as you can now see, is the 3LS4. These are 3LS42 and 3LS43, which are kind of the sub-standards for 3LS4. So I chose these two out of the 4 that are available because they related to the activity I was doing. So the standard is: use evidence to construct an explanation for how the variations in characteristics among individuals of the same species may provide advantages in surviving, finding mates, and reproducing. So that's the first standard. I also could use construct an argument with evidence that in a particular habitat, some organisms can survive well, some survive less well, and some cannot survive at all. So I have my standards that I'm going to be focused on for my activity. And then I have to write learning targets, which are kind of like goals for my students. What do I want them to actually get out of this lesson? So for this lesson, I'm going to have students demonstrate their knowledge of how camouflage assists organisms in survival, and how will students be able to use the evidence from their data to support their statements about how camouflage aids in survival. So for questions to consider, how does camouflage and adaptation assist an organism in survival? What would happen if the environment changed from grass to a desert? Would the same organism survive, and how would that change the outcome of our data? So those are questions that I came up with in terms of the activity and how I might structure that for students. And then if we go back to Moodle, I also have, this is the actual lesson plan that you're going to write out. And so this is the template. Actually, I didn't write this one. A previous student did. So you might see that the learning targets might be a little different than the ones I wrote. So this is what you're going to fill in. So you talk about, first of all, what's some formal or informal assessments that I might do? So what, am I going to do a pre-assessment? We talked about how misconceptions are really important. So in this case, they did a KWL chart, which asked students what they already know about species and camouflage, and they wrote that on a anchor chart. The title of the lesson, they chose LS42 as their 3LS42 as their standard. But the central focus is kind of what is my lesson about? What academic language will I be using, and how will I help students to learn that? And then they had slightly different learning targets than I had. So they listed their materials, and then here's where the 5E comes back in, the 5Es that we learned about early in the term. So this is actually a project where you're pulling in a lot of different aspects of what we've learned over the last several weeks. So in the procedure section, or where you talk about what you're doing, you have to actually show that you are addressing the 5E. So 5E, so engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And then you have to have some kind of closure and assessment for your students. So there's a checklist for you to kind of check off, what do you have everything that you need in the lesson plan, and that's at the bottom. So this is the lesson plan that you're going to create. This is actually going to be due week 10. So, but you're going to be working on it through weeks 9 and 10. So now you can, in your small groups, in your forums, you can work all as one group and do one lesson plan, or you can each do your own lesson plan. It could actually be the same lesson plan, meaning you do the same activity, but you write it up yourself. Or you can choose, like a couple of you want to work together, but some of you want to work by yourselves. I don't care how you do it. I just want each person to turn in a lesson plan that they wrote up. So under week 9, you can see I have the standard listed for you, and you can see now when I pull it up. So there are 4 options for choosing a standard, but whatever activity you pick from the project learning tree has to align to one of these standards. So it has to make sense in terms of these standards. You can't just go with a different activity that doesn't align. So under the resources for week 9, you have your project learning tree online resources. This is the link you'll go to find the activities. And you'll see it says activities for families. You can go to any of these in your own backyard, and it will give you a long list of name that tree, what's the value of that tree, what tree should I plant, poetry. So all of these, you can choose any of these activities, but keep in mind, they have to make sense in terms of the standard that you are addressing. And then you can choose from when all else fails, and you can do it. I actually want you to focus on the ones that are outside. So exploring a local park. This is a good one for looking at habitat. So again, you'll see some that overlap, but the pollution search is a good one. Adopt a tree is a good one. Every tree for itself are all ones that we've done for this activity. So bursting buds is a good one for spring. So pick one of these activities and then use it to complete the lesson plan. So that was a lot in a quick overview of the assignment. So in week 9, you're only going to be actually doing a forum post where you talk about what your activity is, how your group's going to plan for it, if you're doing it together, singly, in pairs, however, and what activity and how it aligns to your standards. So that's the post for week 9. That's the only thing you have to complete for week 9. Week 10 is where you actually turn in the lesson plan. And so you'll notice I've gotten all the to-do lists up for week 8, 9, and 10, and then your final input here, or your final assignment will be due, the lesson plan is due on June 10th. So between then and now, if you have any questions, this is a good time. A lot of times students need to have questions answered, so you can sign up for office hours, you can email me questions, you can post them in your forum. I'll be responding to those if you have in your group forums. And this will be really what we work on between now and the end of the term. So have fun with it. Be creative. Make sure that you remember to incorporate literacy. So either using a trade book, or so you'll have to find a book that matches up with your topic, or use a science notebook that the students will complete during your activity. And if you do science notebooks, that means you actually have to create the notebook pages for your students, and those have to be included in your lesson plan. All right, this is a longer video than normal, so hang in there, and I hope that it's clear what you have to do, and if not, please let me know.